Welcome to the Beam Show, the show where we discuss topics on mental health, well-being and personal development. We are your hosts, Leanne and myself, Tom Weaver, and these conversations come from our experience in training, the therapy room, and of course, our personal experience. In today's show, we're going to run you through our very own well-being checkup. We will look at several key aspects we all encounter in life to help you get a rounded picture of how you perceive your life right now. But before we get started, be mindful that this is a snapshot of right now. So this is an exercise that you will probably need to revisit in months or years to come. The frequency of check-ins is totally up to you, but we like to do this for ourselves, maybe a couple of times a year, and yeah, we use this as a personal check-in as well, is to see where things are going on in our life. We've also got, when we do this exercise, we've got a great visual. We've got a downloadable. So if you like to scribble down on notes, just like Leanne is highlighting right now, you'll be able to head to the resources page and download a version for yourself. If that's not your bag, then you can also just make notes in your phone or the old-fashioned way with just a pen and paper. So the aspects that we're going to cover in this well-being checkup are intimate relationships, social network, health, home, work, money, spirituality, family, zest, movement, learning, and recreation. Now, it sounds like a lot. Some of them may be quite easy for you to assess or measure, and some need maybe a little bit of sort of deep understanding about that topic. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through our results. We did this within the last 24 hours. So we're going to talk through our own well-being checkups. So Leanne, now we've got an outline of how we do a well-being checkup. How do we actually start to measure it?
Brilliant. So one of the things I always say to people, first of all, is to not overthink it. I think as soon as we start to overthink things, then we start to perhaps worry what other people would expect. So I encourage everyone to give their score out of 10 as intuitively as possible. If it feels like a 7, just let it be a 7. I would also encourage people to score it with the intention of nobody else ever necessarily seeing it. So sometimes from the outside, it can look like our life is really good and that we're kind of, oh, well, you're married, you've got kids, you've got a good job, but that doesn't necessarily reflect how we feel internally. And so if we think that someone else is going to see it, we might actually score something higher than we actually feel inside. So I'd encourage everyone to do this privately and to, only share the results with someone they feel really safe to do so. And in that way, you can then be a lot more honest with yourself.
Definitely. I think, when doing it privately, that could still be between a couple. So we often do this exercise together, and then we can gauge on how aligned we are in certain areas. So it might be, we work together, and if I gave it a 10 and you gave it a 7, then there's some things that are not quite the same, or with family or social circle or something like that. So yeah, I think it's really important that if you are in a relationship, then this will be a great way to be able to strengthen that bond as well.
Definitely. It's also something, I've used the Life Wheel in some format for about 15 years. And over that time, it's evolved and we've kind of created our own one based upon what we believe is really important through research and studies and things like that. But it's something that I think is really useful if you feel that everything's going wrong in your life right now. So if you're struggling, I don't know, if you're not happy at work or you've got a health problem, what we're likely to do is to say that everything's rubbish, right? So the life wheel is often a good tool that we've used on each other as well when we've felt like that, to say, okay, well, let's go through and score. And what you tend to realize is that bit is rubbish, but actually all of these bits are really good. So I perhaps need to change my focus a little bit. I'm
And
over focusing on one area.
absolutely, it was really helpful. I mean, we're going to go into it a little bit today, but that was something I was feeling a bit rubbish, and we went through this, and actually, it was only one aspect, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, no, that bit does suck, but the rest was like, oh yeah, no, there's no problems there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's what our brain does, right? It focuses on the one bad thing and then tries to get us to ignore all the good stuff. It's doing that to try and keep us safe, but it can cause us to over analyze, over focus, over exaggerate how bad things are. So I think it'll be interesting as we go through it. Today, we'll probably start to highlight that, how sometimes as well, one thing being bad can have a knock-on sort of domino effect at other areas. So if we can sort out that one thing, then other areas will naturally improve.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And when we do this well-being checkup, or check-in, however you want to say it, and that this, when I say it's up to you how long that you can do it for, I wouldn't suggest doing it every week.
No.
If you did it a couple of times a year, at those sort of key markers, or when sort of you want to gain perspective, then that is great. But using it as a weekly tool is not really something we would suggest to do. So
Yeah.
the other thing that we will tackle is when we go through all of these sections, it's really mindful. Be really mindful to think, how can we make that change? If we've got a score of 4, then it's okay. Well, how can I change that area? And that is one of
Yeah.
the whole purposes of these exercises and these check-ins, is so that we can make improvements in those areas. It's not
Mhm.
the aim definitely is not to get 10 out of 10 in everything.
No, I'd be a bit concerned if someone got 10 out of 10 in everything, because I think we're probably kidding ourselves about stuff. So
Yeah,
I think it's really important we don't get massively hung up on the scores, whether they're really good or really bad, or the real overriding intention of doing a life wheel is that it brings your awareness to where you're neglecting, where you need to focus your attention. So it's not, oh, that's a good result, a bad result. It's just where you are right now. And as we will talk about, it is such a snapshot. So we'll be talking in a moment about what's going on with you and how that's impacting you, and therefore me by proxy. And that kind of then will have a negative impact on some of our scores. Whereas a week ago, when that wasn't an issue, our scores would have been much higher. So it's like we've done this long enough to know that this is all transient, it's constantly moving and shifting. And even if your scores are really low right now, the wheel keeps turning, right? So sometimes we're at the bottom of it, sometimes we're at the top of the wheel. We just never be too smug and never feel hopeless. Just know that that wheel is continually turning.
yeah, brilliant. Okay, so let's get into the wheel.
Let's do.
The first one on our list is intimate relationships, and this is when we went through this. This is the only one that I feel is a 10, for me personally, and I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of that as well, because it's something that I work at daily. And intimate relationships is so much more than it's having those deep connections with the people that are in your circle, and especially my wife. So it's there are times of the day where I feel really, really super connected. And I think we've mentioned before, we love to start off the day with a cacao and a chat. And that is something that's really, really important to me. It's something that's made me feel really connected in that relationship. And for me, right now, in this snapshot of my wellbeing check-in, I it's I'm really strong in that area, so totally happy.
Agreed. So intimate relationships for me, that's definitely you more than anyone else. It's to me, it's marriage. When I instruct people to go through this, intimate relationships are really those people you can bare your soul to, you know, and we don't tend to have many more than one or two of those people, you know, that we can completely be ourselves with. So for me, I would call this sort of the marriage school. And for me, intimacy is so many things. It's, you know, how we communicate, it's having a touch, it's sex life, it's feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling that connection. And so it's so much more than just one thing. And I think that's useful when people are scoring this, is to just be in mind that, you know, potentially your partner might be working away and you might not have physical closeness with them, but you can still feel totally connected to them through connection and little bids and acts of love. So our relationship, I actually scored a 9, not a 10. And the reason that I did that is normally when I score this, it is a 10. But it's probably worth saying that right now you are in a lot of pain with some really bad sciatica.
Yeah.
And so what that means for you is a lot of rest, a lot of frustration, a lot of pain. And what that means for me as your wife is that I am happily stepping into supporting you as much as I can and trying to do everything that I can. But equally, it means that we can't go for our regular walks. We can't pop out and go for a drive and do those things that we do when we're sort of both in full health. And so that's why it's a 9, not a 10, because it's nobody is themselves when they're in a lot of pain.
No. And I think it's really important to highlight here, especially if you're doing this with a partner, then, you know, like a deviation of a couple of points is great. But if I had a 10 and you say had a 1, then I might be picturing our relationship as like something that's wonderful, and the other person, I don't think if one said a 1 and one said a 10, you would be doing this sort of exercise. But just for context, it's okay if your scores aren't exactly the same, especially
Absolutely.
when it's something like this that relates to both of you.
Absolutely. There's something I say in therapy quite often when we're talking about relationships with clients, and that is that we've been sold this idea that our marriages should be 50-50. And no relationship is 50-50. Like at the moment, you're in pain and you're struggling. So I'm picking up the slack. So I don't know, maybe right now is 40-60 or even 70-30.
It's probably less. I'm not doing very much at all at the moment.
But then there's been plenty of times where I've been going through something and you pick up the slack, and then it's like 90-10. So what I always say to clients is that it's okay for us to have that kind of pendulum swing as long as it keeps swinging. Now, if any of us are in a relationship and it feels like I'm doing 70% and you're doing 30%, and that is the same day in, day out, we're going to start to struggle. But as long as the pendulum's swinging, it's absolutely fine for one partner to be picking up the slack. And actually, that's, in my view, one of the things I've signed up for. I'm happy to do that. I'm honoured to do that for you.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So the next element that we're going to look at is social network. And I don't mean how many followers have you got or how engaging are your reels. Social network is all about your social interactions. So it's not digitally, it is how you're communicating with that support circle around you. And that can look like anything. That could be like community clubs that you're part of, even work colleagues that you see socially outside. You know, this can even touch a little bit with family, even though that's covered later on as well. But socially, it's how you are engaging with the community. Mm-hmm. And for me right now, a 6, because I'm not able to, like we said, this is a snapshot. and I am currently injured and experiencing sciatic pain. So I am not able to do all the things that I would normally do socially. So I do still feel connected to my social circle, but it's less than normal. You know, like we've had to cancel some dinner plans with friends, which I was looking forward to, but it would be it wouldn't be a good part of my recovery plan. So I know it's for the best. So it can be a little bit. I know why, and that's really important, is to know why your score could be a little bit lower. But yeah, what do you think on social network?
So there's a couple of things. My score is an 8, so I'm really lucky in that I have quite a few really strong friendships. I've had the same best friend who's my sister since I was sort of 11, and we've shared everything in life. She is absolutely my chosen family, my ride or die. She's my everything. Has been there for me in my best moments, my worst moments, and I know that it wouldn't matter what time of day or night, I can reach out to her and she will be there. So I feel incredibly supported and lucky to have her. But I also have a wider network of friends. We were talking earlier, I do generally try and see at least one friend a week and have that social interaction. And that's something that has always been important to me. It's something I've always looked upon as something I need to foster and cherish. And something I know we've had conversations about, because that wasn't the case for you in the past. It kind of has always baffled you sometimes that I remember key dates for people and I'll text people or send cards or reach out. And for me, that's like how you foster a really solid friendship and know that you have those people. I think the flip side of that is sometimes in my personal relationships, friendships, because of the job I do, I'm often seen as the fixer. So some friends can lean on me a bit too much, of kind of crossing that line between being a friend and being a therapist. But generally, I'm pretty good with boundaries and I protect that. I think one of the interesting things to tackle here is potentially even the difference between male and female friendships as we grow older. And I guess the challenge that you found, I've kept that stability pretty much throughout my adult life. That is different for you. So it might be worth addressing that for some people who look around and think, I don't really have any friends anymore. I had my school friends, my uni friends, and now I have work colleagues. But I don't know if I actually have friends. So it'd be good if you share your angle on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of different things that I wanted to address when it came to social network as well, and the first one I think you touched on a little bit. It was probably 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. I think it was about 10 years ago. I was in a different career, and that career had been broken up into location as well. So I wasn't ever really anywhere. I wasn't, it was harder for me to continue have that consistency with friends, because I was, whether that was around Europe or working in different locations. It then, with travel, it made it very difficult for me to be consistent. So naturally, friends were at that time less of a priority for me. And you only really start to notice that then when there's not much left, and you get to a point where you feel like, I don't have any friends. And then I realized at the same time that the people that I was working with as well weren't, they weren't necessarily the people that I would have chosen as friends. You don't get that at work, do you? It's a little bit like school. You tend to be forced together. Yeah. And so those people didn't often share my values. And I remember doing a similar check-in like this around about the time, and it was like, well, what could you do? And I found that I'm a huge fan of listening to podcasts. So what I did was I was listening to advice and stories from other people. They weren't necessarily my friends, but I was looking for different input daily because, you know, I commuted a lot. So that was hours of my time that I got to hear other stories rather than listening to a labourer's story about a snake. It just, you know, that it was totally, it was a realization that then became important on how I made a change. So when I had a low score, then that social network then started to become different. I was starting to show interest in different topics. So then my social circle, then I started to build on it.
Mm.
And I think that as a man as well, then you tend to get this may be a bit of a generalization, but when I've spoken to other men, it's as you focus on your career, so then you have work friends, and then you focus on your family, so then you have family and then family friends. You tend to like a lot of those older connections that you would have had that I've seen of very good at maintaining. What I've done when I've spoken to male friends, definitely as an adult, is that men are not as good as maintaining those relationships. So we then have to rely on other types of things, a bit more like community, whether that's a fitness thing or a sport thing or volunteering, or doing stuff outside of work. We have to, you know, finding that space to make friends when you're 30 plus can feel a little bit weird. You know, it's you know, when you were younger, you just hang out with someone and it was like, hey, we're friends.
Yeah.
But you know, for a guy to ask another guy, hey, what's your number? It just, I don't know, it felt a bit weird to start with. And once you get over that, then actually you find that there are lots of other men in similar situations. And I think that it's something that men have experienced, definitely 30s, 40s. It's like, yeah, no, friendship's really important. And it tends to be once you've built on your career, your family, then it's like, oh yeah, that was the missing piece. So social network is very, very important. And I didn't really want to make this a men's podcast, but which we will cover in later shows. But it's, yeah, that was my experience with struggling and then building on it and my sort of techniques.
I think it's really important to talk about though, because I think all of us at some point will have had times where perhaps we outgrow our friends or we feel that they're not really there for us or they've used us or we don't have anything in common anymore. And that can feel quite suddenly isolating. And I think you're right, as an adult then to think, how do I go and make a friend is really quite daunting as well, because, you know, you can't just go and knock a door and ask someone if they want to go out on their bike like we would have as a kid. So I completely resonate with that, and I've had times in my life where I've felt not as supported and not as good a network and things like that. I think from watching your journey with friendships, I think there was also an element of you having friends that you kind of made a lot of changes in your life quite rapidly, your career, getting married, becoming a father, all of those things that your friends weren't doing. So instantly there was this great big chasm between you of like, we've got nothing in common at this stage of my life. And it took you a while to find your tribe. And I'm very happy to say you've got a really lovely tribe now scattered all around the world. But it's quite an effort and it's quite a hard thing for any adult to say that I'm struggling. I don't really feel that I've got proper friends.
Yeah.
What I love about what you just shared is the realization that when you start to talk to other people and you talking to other men, it's like, oh, they feel the same as well. Yeah. So if one of you can be bold enough and brave enough to be like, trying to go and grab a coffee, you know, do you want to go out on your bike, whatever it is, then actually the other person is probably quite desperate for that connection as well.
Yeah, like, I mean, I welcome it. If one of those friends in my tribe, they cycled to my house and said, let's go out on a bike and get an ice cream, I'd say an affogato, I would be well up for it. So just, sending that out there. Once I've recovered, though, I'm not going on a push bike right now.
Can't imagine you're on a bike right now. And I'm also thinking of a few of your friends in America that if they suddenly turned up on their bike, you can't really say no.
That's pretty impressive. But so it segues us wonderfully into the next category, the next section, element, however, that we're going to talk about, and that's health.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go straight in. Mine's 5. Feel pretty shit about it. But I'm also aware that it's a snapshot. This is more of a acute health problem. It's not. I'm not dealing with something that's chronic. I am in pain as a result of an injury, a back injury. Dealing with nerve pain, sciatic pain. It's truly awful. And so 5. The 5 is because I'm grateful that I am actually healthy. There is nothing seriously wrong with me. I'm just in a lot of discomfort right now, and that is right now. So a couple of weeks ago, probably would have been like 8 or 9.
Yeah, I think I've scored my health as 7. I think if it was last week, it probably would have been a 9, and it would, it's a 7 because of everything you're going through. I feel a bit more tired. I feel like I'm not sleeping quite as well as I normally would, and I'm definitely not moving as much as I normally would. So yes, it definitely fluctuates. Health really fluctuates, probably more than any of the other scores.
That's right. And there's lots of different elements that you can look into health as well, because that's you can start going into like diet, and which is a part of the 5, because I'm totally on top of that, like how I consume stuff that is improving, is good for my health, avoiding things that are bad for my health. That is that's really that's really solid. So it's it's just down that sort of 5 that have been knocked off the 10 is all down to what I'm dealing with right now. So if when you're doing these exercises, do you want to make some notes? I mean, you'll have the date, but if you were to write a 5, and then in a year's time you're like, oh, why was that a 5? You might just want to scribble on the outside of the wheel, sciatic pain. You'll remember it straight away, because there's no way you're going to forget it. But it's I've learned how to what protocols and what recovery strategies I've got in place. So I'm sticking to what worked before, and I know that this 5 will not stay a 5 for long.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, the next one is home, and it's really your home environment.
Yeah.
So physically, like where you're living, if your house feels safe and healthy, the neighborhood that you live in. So what's your score for home?
So home, I got an 8. I love where we live. That's in Cardiff, and it's a beautiful sort of suburb or village, and it's really friendly, welcoming everyone, neighbours, everything's good. We can walk to everything that we really need, and that's lovely. We've got lovely walks just in nature, but we've also got the house in a way that sort of works for us as well. So a part of the recovery is have a jacuzzi. So that's a wonderful luxury, and it's definitely been a part of helping me recover. But it's a part of the environment. It's like, I can, after work, we can shut everything down and then have a cup of tea and just bob around in some bubbles. It's a really lovely part of being at home. And I'd say it's an 8 because we're also doing some renovation as well. So I don't want to be too much of a downer on like, yeah, but we can't even go in that room barefoot. And it's, stacked up with tools and rubbish and stuff like that. And that's fine. I know that it's a project. I know that the horrible 50-year-old, I don't even know if it's 50 years old, but it's a really old wallpaper in the hallway. It's like, yeah, well, we know it's coming off. So having to knock down a couple of points, yeah, it's not my dream house yet.
Yeah, I've scored mine an 8 as well. So I feel exactly the same. Very grateful to live somewhere that is safe and we can go for walks. We have had previous experience of living somewhere where we weren't safe and it wasn't nice. So that really makes you appreciate it when you've got it. So yeah, but the renovation work when your back is better will be nice.
Yeah. Okay, so next we look at money. And this is something else that can change. And at the moment, right now, I'd look at a 7. I think I have everything that I need and want. And it's a 7 because I'm also haven't got Richard Branson's money, so it's I don't know how I would feel, if it was a 10, I don't know if that's like, lottery money or if that's just at the stage where it's like never having to worry about money or think about it. I think it's probably, it's not a case of 10 is being a millionaire. I think 10 is sort of almost at a point where it's like money isn't something that you necessarily have to worry about. And I know it is something that a lot of us have to worry about, whether it's you having a considered purchase or if, like the dishwasher breaks and it's like, really don't know where I'm going to shift that money from. So yeah, I think money changes, doesn't it? And it's like all of them, and I think it's a complicated one to assess, but you have to try and do your best when looking at it.
Yeah, I agree again. In terms of score, I've said that it's an 8, and my kind of feeling on it is very similar. Like it's something, particularly when you're self-employed, that fluctuates quite a lot. So anyone who's self-employed will know that. Luckily, we've done it for long enough that we know the kind of feast or famine cycle.
Yeah.
And we can ride those waves. But it is one of those ones when I'm working with clients, if the money score is low, it's definitely one of the key ones, money and health actually, that then start to have a negative knock on to every other one. So those two are the key ones that are most likely to knock other scores down. So if I don't have enough money, then potentially I'm not happy at work, and potentially I'm not doing anything social, and maybe I'm not feeling so happy in my marriage because we're arguing about money, whatever it is. So it's worth noting that money and health are a real key player in this thing. We can perhaps not have an intimate relationship and have really good friendships and live a really happy, healthy life. But if we don't have our health, then it's likely that we're going to struggle with the other ones. And if we don't have money, we're going to struggle with the other ones as well.
Yeah. There's so many of these different elements that are interlinked.
Yeah.
And, when you start looking into the different scores, you can see why some are lower, and it is because of one of them, and it could be different at another snapshot. So yeah, it's being mindful of that as well.
Definitely.
Okay.
So we got work.
So yes, work. That's right. Yeah.
So what's your score for work?
I've got an 8. I've now been a part of Beam for coming up 5 years. I think that's next month actually, and I'm really, really glad that I'm doing what I'm doing. I am, I'm definitely a part of the company now. I feel like I'm adding value. I'm helping. I'm now on my mission. I've experienced a career change where I was a little bit unhappy with work and the career that I was on. And now I feel like I've made the right decision. I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I am on that mission of helping others. And I'm really, really happy with work. I love this.
How do you get it to 10?
A 10? I don't know. I think like 5 years into a career could, that's still considered relatively early into a career. I may have found like more sort of career lifetime satisfaction. It may be one of those things that starts to creep up. The more I learn, the more I put into the business, and I think this one could be a bit more of a lifetime score, as in, it's 8 is really, really good. And I think that toward, like, as I get further through my career or find different ways of helping people, it will improve. I think something really drastic would have to happen for it to go down. What about you?
So mine is 9. I very much believe and feel that I'm doing what I'm meant to do when I'm in a training room, when I'm working with a client on a one-to-one basis, and I can see those light bulb moments. I can see people being freed from things they've carried for years. It's the best feeling. But the 10 for me is we've got some plans in the background. Yeah. We've got some cogs turning and they're really exciting. But if they come off, then that's like going to take Beam to another level.
Yeah, it's exciting. Watch this space.
Absolutely.
So the next one is actually something, whenever we've done this in a group setting, this is one that has required a little bit more discussion before people have really understood how to assess it or measure it, and that is spirituality. Do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so we usually call this spirituality or connectivity, and it's, the way I describe it is your sense of being connected to something bigger than yourself. So what we know from research, from positive psychology, is that the happiest people feel that they are contributing to something way bigger than themselves. So it can be your religion, it can be community work, it can be volunteering, it can be a group you're part of, but something where you are a cog, but you're not the whole machine. And so if we lack that, it tends to impact our purpose. And we know that a lack of purpose is strongly correlated with a feeling of depression. So those who have a strong sense of purpose tend to have that purpose for a bigger thing, something bigger than themselves, and therefore tend to flourish more.
Yeah. So where would you put yourself on this scale?
So spirituality and connecting to something bigger than myself has always been very important to me. I've scored it a 9. I feel that I have quite a strong faith, and that's something that massively guides and supports me through the good and the bad. I feel that I'm always learning. It's a topic that I never feel is done. And as I've said to you countless times, I feel the happiest and the most myself when I feel connected. And to me, that's like sitting in prayer, sitting in meditation. It's kind of recognizing that there is a greater power than me that I may not even ever understand in this life, but having faith that it is ultimately there with me.
Yeah, I like that, and I've similar numbers, around about an 8 for me. It's and I think that in the past this is something that has been a lower score for me until the last few years, where it's been something that I've sort of shown more interest in, realizing that actually it's like it's not all on my shoulders. It's there is something more for me to have belief in than just myself, and I think I found tremendous comfort when I started learning a little bit more, having more faith, and contributing as well. So it's like, it doesn't matter what your religion or faith or any of those things are. This score is all about if you feel that you are, like you said, delivering something or contributing to something bigger than yourself. And and it's really important, and it doesn't necessarily matter what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So next up is family.
Okay. So shall I go first?
Yeah. Go.
So my score for that is like a 7 or an 8. So over the last, what was it, about 6 years, 7 years, our family has decreased massively, unfortunately, and we've lost a lot of people. The family members I do have, I'm very, very grateful for, and they're very supportive. But it's a hard thing to accept that, that I was really fortunate that I had most of my key family members all the way till I was 40, and then all of a sudden they just all decided to die at the same sort of time. It's really inconsiderate. And what that's done is it kind of shakes the whole foundation of who you are. It shakes the foundation of the family dynamic. Everyone and everything changes when you lose one key family member. Everything else starts. It's like a key pillar's been taken out, and everything else is really rocky. And everyone's got to find their place. And what I've learned with that over the years is that the grieving process can kind of be, you intensely might grieve for, say, a year, and then you have sporadic bouts of grieving. But the shaking of the foundation process, I think it takes years and years and years for that to restabilize and for things to kind of get back to some sort of norm. And I don't know if I'm there yet, if I have my norm yet, because we lost so many people in such a short space of time. But it's something that I treasure who I have, and I appreciate every single moment I get to spend with those people. But I also know how incredibly transient it is.
Yeah. It's I mean, family could be a complicated one for a lot of people to measure. Relationships in families and the dynamics, and it's something that changes. You think, growing up, I've got a really good family, but then other people enter that dynamic, or people then sort of pass on, and it changes, and it is a changing thing. So right now I'm at a 7. The family that I do have, I feel that I've got good relationships with. I feel that as everything is right now, excluding the loss, because if I were to focus on all the loss in the last sort of 7 years, then it may be more of a negative score.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the way that I choose to measure this is what I do have, not what I don't have.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I think most families have elements of complicated relationships or situations or conflict, and that's totally normal. So if you don't have a high score, then that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's an incredibly complicated one. It's one that, comes up in therapy all the time. There's a joke about therapy that most people are in therapy because of their parents. It's complicated. And I think one of the So benefits, I guess, of getting older and reflecting and kind of processing things through the lens of a therapist is recognizing that everyone is a flawed human. And, sometimes we can be incredibly compassionate with that and decide to accept someone's flaws, and sometimes we can't. And that's everyone's individual choice.
Yeah. It's it can be an element that you can spend a lot of time just having to think about and reflect. And it may be that you want to write some side notes, or maybe have a little journal alongside when you're doing this, just
Yeah.
a reminder of what's going on, because those things, everything that happens in families can be a huge deal at the time and then forgotten about. And I think that it's when we're doing these check-ins, just so you sort of have a bit of a reminder of why you gave it that score as well. So so next we have Zest. And I've got a sad score of 4.
So let's look at Zest first of all and
let's
kind of define it. So Zest is actually being proven to be the most important emotion we experience to have a flourishing life. So this comes from research from Martin Seligman, the godfather of positive psychology. And we need things like love and gratitude and joy and things like that. But the number one thing we need is a zest for life. And so how do we define that? So for me, zest is about being excited, passionate, engaged, having things to enjoy right now, having things to look forward to. It's a very dynamic, moving emotion. And there have been plenty of times, excuse me, there have been plenty of times in my life when I've done this sort of exercise and I've been feeling a bit about things. And I've realized I've stopped seeking zest. And I think what I've learned over the years is our day-to-day life can be incredibly zestless. So getting up, going to work, cleaning the house, cooking the food, picking the kids up, all of those things become very routine and mundane. And if we're not careful, they fill our hours and there's no room for zest. We might get 2 weeks a year on holiday, maybe, who knows? And so something that I really try and focus on is making sure we have zest in our life. Now, for you and I, that's like, we always call them our adventures. We go on our adventures, we plan things, we get excited about things. We're quite playful as well, which creates a lot of zest. So even the mundane stuff can then start to have a bit more zest in. So my score for zest is a little bit better than yours. My score for zest is a 6, but it isn't where it normally is, because someone in a lot of pain isn't going to feel massively playful, right? So someone who's kind of dealing with those challenges is going to be lacking zest and just trying to get through the day in the hope that that healing process is taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I would say that normally my zest for life is relatively high. I'm quite excitable. You've often referred to me as like a Labrador, as I just, wanting to seize those moments and enjoy life when I can. And I think, the reason why it's so low is just, when I've got like spasms going down my leg and it's taking a bit of time to get upstairs, it's very easy to just go, oh,
yeah,
this is the worst. And and then to feel excited about something in that moment is very challenging. I think we're fortunate, we've got a trip planned in the next couple of months. And so there's that glimmer. It's like, okay, I've got to go into recovery right now, and because I know I've got something cool coming up.
Yeah.
So if I think if we didn't have a trip planned, then my zest might have been even lower because of that lacking of stuff to look forward to. So yeah, I know that this is a temporary score, and I know when I look back that I know why, because I'll be able to look at the other scores and I'll be like, yep, that makes total sense. But now I'm bouncing around and living and enjoying what I'm doing.
That's going to move you to your score for movement, which I'm guessing isn't very good either.
It's not very good. We're at a 3, and that makes total sense because I'm not going out for like daily walks, or we're not heading up into the hills. I've not been able to. There was a training camp that I really enjoyed, and since this injury, I've not been able to partake in that at all. So my movement is low, and I think, and I know that we've done this check-in recently, and 3 I think is still it's probably a little bit of a over ambitious score to really.
It's optimistic.
I think that that's too high, to be honest. So it probably should be more like a 1 or a 2. I can move around. I'm doing stretches. I'm doing those things. Doing very slow movement, but I do feel like I've not been out the house a lot.
Yeah, and that sucks.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So my movement I've put as a 6, just because a lot of my movement involves you normally. So I've got to take the Labrador out for a walk.
Just got to follow me around, whilst I'm running around in the field.
So yes, like I obviously want to be around to help and support you and make sure you're not doing stupid things. So I'm moving less, apart from busying around the house, than I normally would. So yeah. So like, just as a general movement, isn't just going to the gym. That might be, if you like going out for hikes, it's all stuff that is, well, it's around movement. But I didn't want it for some people to just assume that it was just like if you go to the gym or not. And then if you go to the gym, it's like, oh no, actually I haven't been for 3 months. I think it's important. Like, movement and exercise are quite different. So if you cycle to work or walk to work, that's movement. You might not consider it a workout, but you are still moving your body in a positive way. Definitely. Okay, and then on the last 2 now, so we've got learning.
I'm a massive nerd. Mm-hmm. 8. Like, I've got some wonderful plans for the next 12 months when it comes to learning. I am a lifelong learner. I don't really like that. I'm passionate about learning. I think I never want to stop learning about anything, and I try and find a lesson in everything I do. So 8 is pretty solid. I'm pretty focused. It hasn't yet started. Might be a 10 when I start.
Yeah, mine's an 8. I learned a long time ago that I am most happy and fulfilled when I feel like I've learned something. So it's therefore a priority every day, whether it's reading something, whether it's a podcast, whatever. Trying to learn something new every single day is always a goal of mine.
Yeah, so important, so healthy for the mind.
Yeah,
and development and growth. So yes, learning should always be something that you're actively trying to improve.
Definitely.
And the last section is recreation. I'm not really gonna keep moaning on about my injury.
We're on the last one. You might as well keep moving.
Recreation's low. If you listen to the rest of it, you'll know why. It's got a stinking 4. So yeah, not going to go on about it, but that's low. I know what's connected to. I know that that'll change.
Yeah. So recreation is basically where you have your fun. Fun and hobbies and things like that. So it could be connected to movement, it could be connected to learning, it could be connected to zest, it could be connected to spirituality. I scored mine a 6, and that's more because whilst we are in the house more, which tends to make us a little bit less happy, I'm cooking, which I really enjoy. I do a sneaky jigsaw puzzle quite often, which I really love. It's like my Zen time. So there's still things I can do even if I'm not moving. So I believe I'm still having fun, and you still make me laugh every day. So
wonderful, wonderful. So now we've got through doing this check-in, and could you sort of share like how you would focus on or looking at this as like that assessment, and how how do you focus on making a change? How do you focus on improving it? How, what would be your next steps after doing this?
So I would encourage people to choose one area that they know they're struggling in. So too overwhelming, if you look, I've got 3 areas that I would really like to improve my scores on: zest, movement, and recreation. But that can feel a bit overwhelming if I think of all 3, although all 3 are very well connected. So what I would suggest people do is think, okay, if I improved one of these scores, which one would have the most impact? So we often connect this when we talk about habits with clients. We talk about a keystone habit, which comes from the idea of building an arch, and the keystone in the center holds up the rest of the arch. What would be that one thing that's your keystone? If I did this, the other areas of my life wheel would improve. So if, for example, I decided that I was going to go for 2 walks a day, then I would feel like I'm moving more. I'd probably have more zest. I would probably listen to some podcasts, so I'd probably learn more. So it would become a keystone habit. So that's the first thing I would suggest people do. The second thing is actually celebrate your current successes.
Yeah.
Look at what you're doing well. So like, where have you got the higher scores? What is it that you're excelling? And actually ask yourself, what am I doing differently in that area that I'm not bringing to something else? So if let's say our marriage is generally a 10. So if that's a 10, but let's say let's imagine our money was a 5, right? So it's like, okay, what energy am I bringing to my marriage that I could perhaps replicate and start to bring some money? So it starts to build that up. Something I'm already doing, I just start to change the focus a little bit more. What we don't want to do is go, oh, well, that's a 10, so I don't even need to look at it. It's a 10 because you're spending energy on it and you prioritize it. We don't want to stop that. So I guess when we've celebrated our successes, when we've highlighted something we want to work on, then, as we would suggest with any habit change, you start small. So just what little thing could I do today to improve that score? So one of the things you're doing, because sciatica is like a theme through your entire life wheel at the moment, one of the things you're doing is you have a rigid protocol. So going in the hot tub, doing the hot and cold therapy, doing the stretches, all of those things are little things that you're doing, which might not make a massive difference today, but over a week, it'll start to improve it, over a month. And then that's where we see real profound change, rather than thinking I've got to go from a 5 to a 10 right now.
That's right. And that 5 that I had in health, I know that when I recover through my back, it's like all the other ones are going to get bumped up as well, because I'll be back moving. I'll have a little bit more zest. I'll have, so that is really, really crucial, is to find out that keystone area that you want to focus on. So I just want to remind everyone that if you want to download a copy of this, then you can head to the resources. So the description will have links for the resources. It will also take you to being able to book a free session with either myself or Leanne. If you are struggling with any of this and you think that you need a little bit of extra support, then book a free 30-minute session with us and see if we are able to help make a change for you with something that is a little bit difficult. So yeah, all the links can be found in the bios or the descriptions. And if you need us, just drop a message. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in.
Thank you.